Hey, happy Friday, everyone. My name is Carrie Guerrero, and I'm going to be one of your panelists this afternoon, starting in just a minute. I work as a data scientist for S&P Global, who is a corporate sponsor for this event. So what that means is I get to give you guys a couple-minute introduction to what we do at S&P Global in my department, which is AI engineering, before we get started with our panel discussion, which I'm really looking forward to. So S&P Global, right? Our core business model is to tap into huge amounts of different publicly available financial and economic and business data sets. And we take all of this unstructured data from these different disparate and diverse sources and bring them together in one place, cleaning them, structuring them, cross-referencing them, standardizing them. And then this is the data that we provide to our clients through a bunch of different avenues. And then as our clients are making decisions for their companies, they get to use this data to help navigate the uncertainty of what's happening. So then we, as data scientists at S&P Global are in a really fortunate position in that data science itself is a really natural extension of the work that S&P already does. Because it's a data company, data is our central business asset. This is the finished product that we give to our clients. So as a data company, from the ground all the way up to our senior leadership, we have a really strong understanding within S&P Global of the value of data science. So that makes it a little bit unique in that everyone understands why it's important that we are able to do more and find more and extract more from our data. And it also is sort of a amazing experience in that it's the first time I've worked someplace where you haven't had to scrounge around a bunch before you start modeling, because we have such a huge backlog of years and years of structured and very carefully curated and kept track of data sources. We're in a lovely position to just dig in and start finding new insights and extracting new information. And we really get to benefit from the work that everyone else in the company does to provide very rigorous infrastructure and architecture around this data that we can just then plug into. So that's lovely. And then what particularly my department does as we fit into this data machine engine that is S&P Global is that we work to provide machine learning solutions in the form of production grade applications and services to help this sort of core business model of cleaning and standardizing and augmenting and extracting new information from data that we then build in hopefully such a way that it is applicable across wide expanses of our business. And then, the last thing I wanted to touch on briefly, since this is a panel about promoting diversity and women within the workplace and the elevation of many different ideas, is just that it's not super surprising that S&P ended up a sponsor for this, because it is a thing that we think about a lot, and that we found not just from everyone tells you this and you see this in the literature and stuff, but if you take a look at the actual data, you see that the more you elevate diverse ideas and the more that you elevate gender equality within your workplace, you get not only better businesses that produce better products, but you actually get a global economy that is more stable and is overall stronger. So I am very, very excited to continue talking about this with all of the lovely panelists. And with this, I'm going to transfer it over to Renee, who is our moderator.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Renee Teat. I'm the Director of Data Science at Helio Campus, which is a higher ed analytics company. And I have with me today Pri Oberoi, Corinne Reed, Nash Lee, and Carrie Guerrero. And we're going to have a discussion about Rising to the Top, a panel with women leaders in data science. So I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves in just a moment, but just to give you an overview of kind of the plan for this panel, we're going to first do the introductions. Then I'm going to go around and do kind of a mini interview. Those of you that have heard my podcast, Becoming a Data Scientist, know I love to find out how people got to where they are in their careers. So we're going to do like 5-minute interview with each panelist. Then we're going to do some questions for the whole panel. And you can also submit questions online. So please check out the hashtag on the website below the live stream and submit questions to us, and we will be answering your questions at the end of the panel. So without further ado, let's get started. So Pri, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves? Just talk about your current company and your role, where you're from, and anything else you want to say as an introduction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am very excited to be a part of this panel. I'm Pri. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I am a senior data scientist at Axios, which is a news media company. I've been there for just over half a year now, and it's been an incredible experience. I hope to talk about that a little bit and what my day-to-day looks like. I live just outside DC in Maryland with my partner and 3, but maybe 4 dogs soon. It's really hard not to get a 4th dog right now. And I've been working in machine learning in like the private and public and research sectors for a while now. And so I'm really excited to hear everyone else's perspectives on this panel.
Great, thank you. Corinne, how about you?
Hi, I'm Corinne Reed. I'm the Vice President of Data Science and Innovation at Craneware. And Craneware is a healthcare company. And what we process data for hospitals to make sure that they're basically everything is set up properly from the data perspective to make sure that all the information that they send to the insurance companies is complete and accurate so that they can be reimbursed from insurance companies for all the services they provide. And so I've been in that role for a little over 2 years, and prior I worked in other data science roles in the healthcare software technology space. And what I'm charged with from the innovation perspective is building out new products that leverage AI and machine learning to improve the software that we provide to hospitals, as well as coming up with existing kind of production-ready AI solutions to be integrated into existing products. And so we reach about a third of the US hospitals with our solutions.
Great. Nash Lee, why don't you go next?
Hey everybody, so I'm Dr. Nash Lee, and I am an applied science manager at Amazon AI and artificial intelligence. And so I, have actually got my PhD in computer engineering from Georgia Tech, and then also with Corinne there. And so went to undergrad at Mississippi State University. I'm originally from Jackson, Mississippi, and so during that time, I've worked at several companies. Also was a CTO of a startup called ParkPick, which we actually sold to Amazon, which is what brought me to Amazon 3 years ago. And so I've led tech teams and engineers at different places. I first started at Amazon with the visual search team. So if you use the Amazon shopping app and you hit the camera button, you can point it at something like your shoes or your watch. So that was the first product that we worked on. And over the almost past year, I've transitioned to the AWS team focusing on fairness and face recognition, which is a huge topic. So definitely a lot going on there. And so really happy to be here today, excited that so many people are watching and hope that we can help benefit someone.
Great, thank you. Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, so I talked to you guys for 1 second, but I've been in my role at S&P Global as a senior data scientist for 2 years and 3 days, I think now. And I came at data science after a mathematics degree where I didn't want to actually go straight to a graduate program and get stuck in a windowless research room forever. So I joined the United States Marine Corps. Spent a few years doing that, and that is sort of what started my journey into it would be awesome if I knew how to program, which turned into programming and math, turns into a good data science career. So I live in Charlottesville, Virginia. I've been here for 5 years now and absolutely love it. And I have degrees in mathematics and also systems engineering.
Great. All right, so I'm going to start the interview. So if you're not talking, you can go ahead and mute, and we'll start with Pri. So Pri, you've been the director of data for a political candidate. You've been a data scientist with deep learning analytics doing computer vision type of work, and now you're a senior data scientist at Axio. So your background is in biology, and you have an MS in biotech with a concentration in bioinformatics. So how did you originally get into data science, and Did you take any courses? Did you learn that on your own? What was that transition like going from biotech to more broadly applied data science?
Sure. I don't think I knew I was moving towards data science at the time. After undergrad, I was working in healthcare on the policy side, and I found that I loved working with the data more than I did anything else. And I had this awesome opportunity to, in the evenings, intern at the National Museum of Natural History's entomology department, and this awesome researcher took me, let me come in every day after 5 p.m. And catalog horseflies. But she was just someone that we had a lot in common, both in our personal lives and in our interests at work. And she was doing this side project on the ways in which women entomologists, researchers across in the last past decades have been submitting specimens to the National Museum of Natural History, and then their contributions get overwritten by men. And I was like, I like you. And she was the one that kind of pointed me at this intersection of stats and coding and scientific data, and that there was something to do there. That's when I went back to school to get a master's degree in bioinformatics and biotech. I since then have not touched really genetic data since I finished my master's degree. What I've learned since then is I really love getting to work really closely with experts in some domain, whether that's a field of study or a product, and apply the same statistical methods that I've been building over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask about. So with that background in bioinformatics and statistics, how have you applied that to your work in your later stages of your career?
Those skills have been incredibly helpful, in large part because a lot of the methodologies for working with really large data sets came out of that research community, because they had to handle that problem. That in combination with robust communication of results and visualization. Those are all skills that they were a little more nascent for me when I started my degree, and they have consistently helped me throughout my career.
Great. So I also saw that you've done some pro bono work and organized some meetups and mentorship programs. So has that helped with that communication that you're talking about? And how otherwise do that type of work relate to your career and your own data science learning and enhancing your own skills?
Yeah, absolutely. I have done that almost the whole time. They kind of scratch two different itches for me. Doing this kind of pro bono projects on the side. Usually what I used to do, especially when I was first trying to build out more of my skill set, was I would reach out to nonprofits who were doing work that I really cared about, with communities I really cared about. Often those nonprofits were in a position where they didn't have the resources or the time really to invest in understanding their data and doing something with it. And so I would just approach them and be like, hi, can I build something for you? Is there a problem I can help you solve? That let me build my skill set, certainly, and also figure out, like, how do you scope out a problem? How do you convert a real life human problem into something that has an objective function that you can iterate on and improve? It helped with that. It helped with my technical skills, but it also allowed me to see what the impact of doing this kind of work what it can look like. And that, I think, gave me a lot of fuel to continue my career in this field. I right now, the community that I'm most active in is out in tech. And that building that community has been incredibly helpful, both for my career. I ended up at Axios because our chief technology officer is also part of Out in Tech. And I ended up looking her up and I was like, I would love to work for this person. And that's how I ended up here. But also that kind of community has been really helpful for me, because the vast majority of my time in this field, people with my identities have been underrepresented. And it can be a very weird, skewed way to look at the world. Like, you start to kind of be like, wait, it's hard to tell what's real and what's kind of skewed. And having those communities and having people that have similar shared experiences that you can use as a resource and they can kind of give you a reality check has been just monumentally helpful.
Great. And you mentioned that you use some of that networking to get your current job. What recommendations do you have for people that are learning data science to get into pro bono work or meetups in terms of both learning and networking for a career?
The networking piece has absolutely been incredibly helpful. I think something that helps with it, I realize that not everyone can just take time out of their day in addition to like a full-time job or in addition to going to school full-time to do pro bono work. I don't think that is the only way to get the skills that you need. That is just what kind of worked out for me. I think that something like I was part of local civic hack projects and then a bunch of community nonprofit like Lesbians Who Tech and Out in Tech communities. And that allowed me to find opportunities to meet with people that could give me some work or could give me the kind of experience or allow me to be on panels and things like that. I think I used to try to approach this as if it was just something I was getting out of some community or some nonprofit or some organization. My experience changed substantially when I started contributing back to it and being a resource for other people, even when I was more junior. I think that is a great way to interact with the community and get the networking and job recommendations and stuff like that as kind of a byproduct.
That's great advice. And that's something I always encourage too, is that there's always somebody that's just behind you on the career path. So even if you think you're pretty junior, you still have a lot to offer. Great. Okay, let's go to Corinne next. So Dr. Corinne Reed, you have a PhD in chemical and biomolecular engineering. So you've primarily worked in the healthcare industry, and you've gone from data scientist to senior to principal data scientist to vice president of data science and innovation. So did you originally plan to be on a leadership track in the industry?
I don't know that I went in with like this is the plan when I first started because a little bit of everything was a little bit haphazard in the sense that when I was completing my PhD, I kind of Googled my skills. I was like, oh, machine learning, data, coding. Because even though I did my PhD in chemical engineering, all the research was computational. It was actually in the biofuels area. So I wanted to do something because I was into renewable energy. The qualification was I wanted to leverage my skill set and I wanted to do something that made an impact. So I thought, okay, healthcare, that helps people. And these are my skills. So this kind of works. But in terms of the leadership thing, at first it was organic in the sense that it was naturally what I would do. I would, set up kind of educational sessions, mentor people, teach, come up with new initiatives. Because I was a first data scientist at my prior company, and even at this company was sort of a wide open space. So I realized, okay, we can do some use cases, but for some of this, we need to build new products around it. And so it just ended up bringing in new technologies, new ideas. It just became bigger, and that the role that I was taking was bigger. So when I joined my current company, I was building out a new team. But so part of it, so it just was a little bit organic, but inorganic in the sense that one of the great data scientists who works on my team, she has been in the industry a little bit longer, and she has kind of, I think, 20 years of experience. So even though she was on my team and I was managing her, she almost sort of mentored me in a way, saying, you're doing this work on a level of VP, so you need to kind of say that that's where you're at and that's where you want to go. So she almost gave me that push. So it was organic in that I was just doing the work and excited about building new products and kind of expanding what I was doing. And then she said, hey, you need to, you're working at this level. And so this is where you need to be because this is where you're going, and make sure that you're on that path. So then it became very intentional at that point. And then I understood that it would give me
advocate like that.
Yeah. And it would give me more opportunity to give more opportunities for women and people of color and things like that. So that's kind of how that went.
Great. And you mentioned having been the only data scientist at one of your roles. So what's been your experience and the difference between being on your own and the first, kind of forging the way for data science at a company versus being on a larger team? How's that experience been different?
Yeah, so I think you just have different challenges. So when I was although I was on the only data scientist, I was on a larger development team. So that kind of helped. So in the beginning, the challenges are figuring out where the data is, getting the access that you need, bringing in the new technology, that you need and kind of getting things started, coming up with use cases, understanding the lay of the land, and figuring out the data engineering piece. But now that I have a team of data scientists and data engineers and kind of have more of the infrastructure there that we need, kind of the new challenges are, okay, now that we have use cases, how do we get this into production? How do we create a product around it? So it's the first thing is finding the data that you need, finding value in the use cases, finding something that provides business value, that helps our customers, that helps patients. And then the next phase is now that you have value, how do you get it into production and things like that? And how do you scale? So it's just kind of different challenges along the way.
Yeah, definitely. And since you have a PhD, do you want to comment at all on how much you think that degree has helped you, and whether you think that other people should try to get an advanced degree if they want to be a data scientist?
I think it's hugely valuable because it gives you the training, but also the problem solving piece. And in the sense that like the kind of the fun frustration of the PhD research where, no one is going to give you the answer. You have to find it. You have to contribute to science. And no one is going to solve it for you. So I feel like the initiative and the frustration and the late nights, the late sleepless nights, and all of that culminates into something that you can use because you have this confidence of, I can solve this problem because I have no choice, right? And so kind of taking that into industry, it just makes you very self-sufficient and confident and used to kind of the pain of problem solving. So I think there's other ways to kind of get that type of grit, but I think it forces you into that mindset. So I think it's helped in that way. And just the basic skills, it's easy. It's the formal education does help you acquire the skills that you need, but I think it's the other stuff, the chutzpah that you get from the pain of PhD.
Yeah, and we'll be talking a little bit more later about, different paths to getting to data science. So another thing I wanted to bring up is that a lot of people think that to get a job in data science, you have to go to like San Francisco or New York or work in the tech industry. For me, as a data scientist living in Harrisonburg, Virginia, I know that's not true. But can you tell us more about the data science industry in the Atlanta area and also in healthcare industry across the country?
Yeah, I think maybe I'm biased, but I think Atlanta is a great place to do data science. Nash Lee is there with a great team from Amazon. So you've got universities, you have Georgia Tech, Emory, all kinds of Atlanta University Center. So I think there's great data science happening everywhere. So I would encourage folks to look for jobs just about everywhere. And one good thing is some of these other non-traditional areas, you have lower cost of living, and often the salaries are actually comparable to the West Coast. You get West Coast money with Atlanta living. What's not to love? So
Great. Okay, let's go with Nash Lee next. So, Dr. Nash Lee Cephas, you also have a PhD. Yours is in electrical and computer engineering. You've been involved with computer engineering since undergrad, and you're now an applied science manager at Amazon AI, you mentioned, with AWS. You also are the founder of the Bean Path. So can you tell us more about your career path? How did you get into a leadership role at a big tech company?
Right. So I think kind of like Corinne, like I didn't set out to say, okay, I'm gonna be applied science manager one day at Amazon. Not at all. And I even talked about even my path into Amazon was somewhat very non-traditional. And so after graduate school, I had, I'd interned at different places. Did research, and I even worked part-time at places like GE, and I'd also in undergrad did interns and studied abroad and things like that. And so I think I really just like to help people. And that's really what it boils down to. When I first heard about the startup company that I ended up being the CTO for, I knew that it was a young lady. She also happened to be a Black female who had this problem. She wanted to be able to solve parts, basically be able to recognize parts with a camera. So replacement parts. And her name is Jewel Birch, and she was the CEO of the startup company called Part Pick. And so, if you have a screw, you drop it down the drain, or your dog eats it. Who knows what happens? Sometimes you get packages from Amazon and they don't have all the parts in there for some reason. And so it would be nice if you could just take a picture of the part you do have and be able to automatically recognize that. And so I thought that was a great idea, and I had the AI experience and computer vision to be able to build her very first prototype. And so again, it wasn't about, oh, you can be CTO at a startup and one day sell it to Amazon. I never was thinking that. I was always thinking, okay, how can I use my skill set in data science and AI to help solve problems for people, for regular, everyday people? And of course, me being from Jackson, Mississippi, which, Mississippi, we often get a bad rap. And I live in Atlanta now, but as you mentioned, the Southeast in general gets overlooked a lot of times. And, we have very bright and brilliant people here who, and we have a different set of problems that we can try to solve. And a lot of times our solutions are applicable across the world. And so I love to help promote and show, that we're doing some great things in this part of the world. And again, it was all about helping people. And so once we were acquired, our company was acquired by Amazon back in 2016. They needed someone to manage the team. And so turns out I was a really good people manager. I never said, oh, I want to manage people one day. That was never a part of the plan. I actually consider myself an introvert, and I don't really like talking to people that much. But I end up doing what I have to do. But it turns out it was really great, and I'm really good at it. And people, give me really high ratings. And so I continue to do it. And at the moment, I love to try to keep a balance between the management and the tech side. And even that in itself can be a challenge, especially at a place like Amazon, where you have so many different, hats that you have to wear. But I think it's been interesting. And again, like, the path wasn't really set out in the beginning, but it's just the things that happened, and I just went along with it.
And can you talk a little bit more about those contrasts, the difference between, for instance, working at a small startup versus working at a big tech firm, or the difference between working as an individual contributor versus working as a manager? Like, just talk a little bit more about the different experiences you've had in those different roles.
Yeah. So I think, of course, when you're working at a startup, you are the data analyst, you are the QA person, you are the CTO, you're the developer, you're all these things. And so you have to, focus on a lot of different things at the same time. You often have to put in long hours. When you're doing a startup company, it's just like starting any other business. It can be very difficult. We were putting in like 16-hour days. Because if you don't work, if you don't meet your milestones, like, you literally don't get a paycheck the next 6 months. And so that was a challenge. However, at the same time, because it was our startup, because we were the ones in charge, we were the ones solving, we were very much in touch with the problems we were trying to solve for people who were looking for parts. We were motivated. We even had, I often tell this, we had free unlimited vacation, but no one took vacation because we were just so in tune with, like, working and solving the problems. And so that's kind of startup life. Now, on the contrary, at Amazon, I have a much better work-life balance in terms of, going in at a certain time, leaving. And, certain times we have to work a little bit longer, but for the majority, I have control over my day. And, I don't call the shots as much as I did at the startup, but I still find a way to work on things that I'm passionate about. And in terms of the individual contributor versus being a manager, so my first 2.5 years or so at Amazon, I was a people manager. And so, and again, as a manager, you have to be a little bit of a counselor, a little bit of a mother, a little bit of you have to fix chairs and stuff. Like, you have to do all kinds of stuff like that. And also, learn how to talk to people and adapt, because different people have different personalities, and you have to know how to motivate them to work and get their work done, and make sure you're doing it in a way that's not like micromanaging. And so a lot of great skill sets that people kind of undervalue sometimes, and what it takes to be a people manager. And I would say, as of almost the past year, I've been more so of an individual contributor, which I love as well. And I think being closer to the technology is something that I'm really passionate about, because at least, I get to explore new things, and I get to be at the beginning of it. And then I always love handing it off to the engineering team so they can go and make it into a product. But I love feeling like I kind of created that, or I kind of was the one who birthed that technology.
Definitely. And so having had that experience, what made you want to start your nonprofit organization? So how was your career experience informed by your time at the Bean Path with your mentorship, and also vice versa? How has that, benefited from your experience in your career?
Yeah, so the nonprofit kind of spun up after I'd been in Atlanta working with the startup and working at Amazon for a while, and I actually fly back and forth quite a bit to Seattle and California, the West Coast. Not right now though, but before pretty often, and so I've been exposed to so many different things, so many different environments where you have brilliant people like us who are very technical. But then I would go back to communities like the one that I'm from, and other areas in Mississippi and Jackson, Mississippi, and areas like that. And I would see such a huge gap in between, like, wow, I'm over here doing these cutting edge things, and like this is like blowing my mind. But then when I go back here, it's like I can't really talk to them about it. They're not aware of it, or maybe they really are interested, but they just have no one to kind of show them. And so that's kind of where the Bean Path birth came out. And so that was almost a year and a half ago when I founded the Bean Path. And what we essentially do is free tech office hours at the local libraries. And so people can come in and get one-on-one help. We have a whole host of volunteers in various areas of technology, whether it be data science or UX design or simple website development, as well as people to mentor you through your startup experience. And so they could just come in. And these are people who normally would think, okay, who am I to get into tech or start a startup? I don't have a technical background. Some of these people don't even have education background, and so, but those are the people who are dealing with these problems that they have the best solutions to them. Not me. I have a PhD in computer engineering, but the problems that they're dealing with, they know how to solve it. It's almost like you get a PhD because you over 5 or 6 years or so you looked at that problem so much. You're the best person to solve it, and so it's really just about empowering those communities to get into technology and to understand, that they too can do it, and they don't have to be intimidated by it. And we provide that safe space. I think on the other hand, as far as, really leveraging a company like Amazon and that platform, and it has allowed me to get in front of a lot of audiences and tell my story and inspire others, the next generation of women in data science and people of color. And so I think it goes hand in hand. I always say I can't. My ideal job has to have some type of impact on a community, and I also have to be touching some type of cutting edge technology, and that's always going to be the case for me.
And that's one thing I find great about data science is there's a lot of ways to do that. That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, let's switch over to Carrie. Okay, so Carrie, you and I actually have the same degree, so a master's in systems engineering from UVA. So you have that background in math and physics, which isn't my strength, but do you think people need to go into a data science program now that those exist in order to get a career in data science? And if not, how do you communicate to hiring managers what your data science related skills are with a degree that doesn't say data science or analytics?
Yeah, so I think obviously the answer to this, you can see it from this panel of lovely people, is that like you don't need to have a data science degree to get into data science. The path to a data science career can come from all kinds of places. And honestly, that's part of why data science is so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
We pull together not just like diverse people on a visible level, but like diverse people on a background level and an experiential level. So that's like one of the huge things that makes data science more awesome than it would be otherwise. So yeah, and I mean, with that being said, like I've had people come specifically from the UVA Data Science Institute and do fabulous. So there is value in these programs, right? But they're definitely not the only path to data science. And I think echoing on what we heard from everybody else, but the main thing for me when I'm looking at applicants that have like a less than I've been a data scientist for 5 years at company X background is you're really looking for a drive to pick up technical skills and a background that shows that like you've had this history of interest in things that are technical, whether it's a bioinformatics degree, whether it's a math degree, whether it's I'm a physicist. We have a lot of physicists on my team. So it is a situation where anything that you've done that shows that you are interested in the technical stuff, call that out. People will be interested. And like be open about how much you want to learn. Because the truth about data science is like if I took a break for 6 months and I dropped off the face of the earth and then I came back 6 months later, I'd have so much to catch up on if I was still going to be an adequate like natural language processing engineer. So I think some of it is like all of us within the data science field are continually playing catch up and always learning. So I don't know. I definitely don't think you have to come from a data science program to be very successful.
That's been my experience too. So you spent some time serving in the Marine Corps as a geospatial intelligence analyst and a data manager. So tell us a little bit more about that role and the experience you gained there. And then what was it like transitioning from the military to work at local businesses? So you've been at CCRI, Locus Health, and S&P, which a lot of people on the call will recognize as Charlottesville businesses. So what was that like making that transition from military to, I guess, small business life?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And we can start at the beginning of the question, which is um, so the uh, being in the United States Marine Corps was extremely formative on a number of levels. Maybe the one that's most pertinent to this conversation is that I came into my job as a geospatial data manager and a topographic analyst from a math degree, from doing really, really well in school and being pretty sure I was the smartest person in the whole world. So the biggest thing that I took out of working in the United States Marine Corps that has been still valuable every single day is just that you could be the smartest person in the room and you could understand the problem perfectly and you could have the perfect solution and be 100% right about it. And if you don't have relationships with the people around you, and if you aren't able to communicate what your solution is in a way that is humble and putting the client first that you're trying to take care of, it's going to die. It's going to go nowhere. And it's a big shift to go from trying to sound super smart to like, everything to being like, well, I have to be able to explain this to someone who knows nothing about data, nothing about this field. And it taught me the lesson A, stuff dies if you can't communicate it. And B, like a lot of times when you talk to a client who has no data science background, they ask questions and they dig into stuff in a way that someone else might not because they might feel like they don't want to look stupid. And you find out how much you actually know your own answers. Because if you can't explain it in a way that like anyone you're speaking to can totally grasp and understand, chances are you don't actually understand it that well yourself. So those are the big Marine Corps things. And in terms of the transition, like it's terrible to transition from the Marine Corps. It's so hard because you go from an organization that is, so strongly controlling your behavior. You walk up to someone you've never seen before, you see the rank on their chest and you know how to greet them, how to speak to them, who walks away first, what are appropriate conversation topics, to being thrown in what feels like the wild, wild west. But, so it was an adjustment. I'm extremely lucky that I landed in Charlottesville because relevant to the other conversations about like how there are these really strong communities outside of like the West Coast. Charlottesville is an amazing tech community. It's like an amazingly inclusive. We want to teach everybody. We want to like elevate everybody and have panels and have discussions and bring everyone in. So I do feel very, very fortunate that this is the tech community that I landed in post military.
That's great. And you already answered my next question, which you can talk about a little more if you'd like to about what is the data science industry like in Charlottesville? Because I know when we have some other conferences, we always bring together people, and I'm always impressed with like the wide variety of companies that are there, the Data Science Institute at the school. I mean, all that coming together in a small town. So what is it like to work there and to look for jobs in Charlottesville?
Yeah. Once you get into like the data science tech infrastructure, like community, you know everybody. you go to these events and you switch jobs and you're like, oh, I know you. I heard you talk. Oh, hey, I was on a panel with you. Oh, and it's lovely. It ends up feeling like this spread out network of all of these people that want to connect you and bring you together and teach you things. And it's been, I mean, lovely. I'm so happy here.
That's great. Okay, so thanks for doing these little interviews. I feel like I know you so much better. And now we can go into some of the other questions. So you can unmute, and everybody feel free to jump in as you want to for these other questions. So one thing I wanted to start with is that we've been talking about career paths. We can talk a little bit more about, degrees and what you think is required to make progress in this field. But what would you say are the key traits that got you to where you are today? So we're all in senior or leadership positions. How did you develop those traits, and what are those traits? Anyone feel free to start.
I can get us started. I think a key trait for me, and Carrie, this kind of resonated with me when you were talking about it, is being able to communicate about what the problem we're trying to solve is, what's up with the data, what kind of approach you're considering, what its shortcomings are, how it's going to fail. Being able to communicate all of that in a way that that actually gets the people that might use what you're building or might actually make what you're building into something that gets deployed into production is incredibly valuable. And I feel like I had to just kind of bump my way along until I figured that out, because it is the kind of thing where you're like, no, seriously, I have the answer. That's not enough. It's an incredibly valuable tool for me that may not work for everyone is I rely heavily on visualization. I rely heavily on visualization of data and of my results and of what the model is doing. I find that it tends to convey a lot more information and nuance than I can with words most of the time. And then the other thing that kind of led me to where I am now is I found across jobs, there was always some force that was slightly pushing me in some direction that I wasn't super thrilled about. For a while, it was like, oh, well, you're good with colors. Maybe you should be a front-end engineer. For a while, it was like, oh, you're somewhat good with people. Maybe you should be a manager. And those paths may make sense for some folks, but I kind of always had to autocorrect and be like, you know what, that's not what I'm interested in. That's not what gets me really excited to wake up in the morning to work on. So that those corrections are something I had to learn to get more and more forceful with.
Yeah, great point.
That idea of correcting your day-to-day work stuff to be what you want super resonates, because there's always a million things going on in your job that you could do. I could do this. This might be a problem. Maybe I should take this thing. Maybe I should handle all this little thing. And making sure that the work that you are doing is in support of where you want your career to go. In particular, for me, it's been around pursuing technical excellence, and advocating for creating a creative environment that everyone can be, thoughtful and feeling responsibility and ownership for. It's very easy to get distracted by the day-to-day of everything else that's happened. And the more that you can keep focused of the things that I did this week, does it build the environment that I want? And does it pursue the technical excellence that I want? It's really important to have those touch bases with yourself. And when you have a good manager, you get them on a weekly basis, because you touch base and you say, what did I do? Is this really what matters to me? So.
Corinne or Nash Lee, do you want to weigh in on that one?
Sure. So I think, I guess the main thing is first and foremost is the technical skills, then the communication to be able to communicate results, to convince or convey what the business value of things are. And then now, as I move into more of a leadership role, while also still doing some of the technical things, it's kind of understanding, building relationships across teams, but also understanding what are the needs are of each of the people on my team, kind of what makes them tick, what resources they need. Some need more one-on-one attention, some want kind of less frequent touch bases. So kind of what do they need from a growth perspective in their career, from a growth perspective on the technical side, and what motivates them. So I think it's the other part is sort of kind of the relational piece is really important now at this stage as well.
Great.
Yeah,
And I would say all that rings true.
I would just add, knowing what type of culture your work environment is in, because there are so many different types of cultures. It's not one way is the right way. You figure out, sometimes you're put in an environment where you can actually change the culture or shape the culture. Then I, just recommend having that skill set of, what are the different types of ways that we can operate as a team. Am I, for example, letting my team, okay, we're going to have core hours. Everybody has to be in at this time, so we can have meetings. But other than that, it's up to you. Are you going to have daily meetings where you just, we call them daily stand-up meetings where, okay, everybody says what you do yesterday, what you do, what are you doing today, any blockers. So I think knowing somewhat about just, for me, as far as managing a team, like how you want to manage that team, it's a lot of thought that has to go in that too.
Yeah, I agree. And all of that rings true to me. And I would say that in my experience, communication is always really key. And a lot of people ask me when they're thinking about becoming a data scientist, like what are the different skills they should learn? And they're really asking about technical skills. But I always throw communication in there and visualization, like Pri mentioned, because being able to explain what you're doing and understand what other people need, it might not be exactly what they ask, but if you can translate that into what they really mean and what their motivations are, it's definitely important. Okay, so let's move into the next question. So Pri, let's start with you on this one. Do you feel like you can bring your full self to work? Are you protective of certain aspects of your identity? Are there any situations you've encountered that are related to your identity that you're willing to share that have been experiences in your career?
Sure. This is such an interesting question because I feel like has evolved so much for me. I'm very fortunate for my recent history to be at companies where I do feel like I can say yes to that yeah, I can bring my full self to work, but I'm not always sure what that means and what that looks like. I had this experience when I first started at Axios where we had a company-wide retreat, and our tech team, which is a good portion of the company actually, has parity for men and women, and within the tech side, and we do pretty good on other metrics. And so they care a lot about that, and they actually implement it and build a workplace where folks don't just get hired, they stay. And during this first retreat, something like felt really odd to me, and I realized it was that like I had put a lot of like an alternative personality in place for work that made it where I didn't talk about my personal life as much. I wouldn't talk about my partner as much. Like I would try to kind of wash away the parts that wouldn't resonate with everyone. And that had lifted. And I've had that experience a few times now, but it's always a little bit odd because you almost don't realize you're doing it until you don't have to. And so I think an early experience for me that made me realize that I had to do that because it is adaptive, it is useful at times. I had someone at my job, actually my manager at the time, ask me really invasive questions about me and my partner who's trans. And I was just like, that's really weird. And I think I handled it okay in the moment, but I had there was an LGBT group on campus or at work, and so I was able to share it with them, but I wasn't able to talk to anybody in leadership really about like this was super not okay. And I think as a result of that, like there have been parts of myself that I've curbed, and so the ways that I see how I can bring my full self to work now is that, and I see other people doing it, is talking about your personal life and feeling okay about it, talking about, what you need that day to be at work, because we don't actually just like leave our personalities and our needs outside of my office door, which is right there actually. Right? Like you have those with you all the time, and like talking about like, hey, you know what? I had a super hard week. This is what I feel like we can achieve at work today, but I might need to take a break on this thing. And being able to communicate that and be a little bit vulnerable, that like being able to be a little bit vulnerable at work so that you can do your job better is how it shows up for me.
And who else has experiences to share about that, bringing your full self to work?
I guess I just have kind of an antidote, where it's kind of probably prior to when I started working. kind of an extreme thing about to when I was first starting to interview for jobs. I was getting, "You're not qualified for these positions," and I thought, well, I really, really fit the mold. So I actually went and wrote about this. It's silly, but I went and applied for the exact same jobs, and I changed my race to white, and then I got interviews. Now, some of them, they were the most awkward interviews ever, but I went. I shouldn't. It's kind of funny. But so, I mean, those types of things still happen. So that's kind of an extreme case of I brought my white alter ego to a couple interviews.
I know this also ties into the question about degrees. So people with different backgrounds might, have to have different credentials to be taken seriously in the industry. So is that something that you found? I mean, clearly, if you were just changing your race and getting a different response, that plays into it. But in terms of being hired or being taken seriously, if any of you have stories to share about things that have happened to you, I think that would be valuable for our audience to hear.
Yeah, so okay. I was just gonna say, so for example, I am at Amazon, and I'm not happy about this, but I am the only Black female applied scientist out of like 1,000 applied scientists at the whole company. And so, unless someone's recently hired, which I hope someone has been, but that is one of the challenges that, for example, what I deal with, for example, fairness and biases in face technologies. And for example, my entire team, which I think my team is great, but just to show you an example, my entire team is either East Asian male or Indian males. I think it might be one other woman on the team who's also East Asian. And so, it can be challenging. It was challenging at first. I mean, most of us as women, we're used to kind of being the only woman in the room or the only woman in our class, or in various situations like that. So we probably learned at a very early on how to adapt and how to, handle those types of environments. And so, again, it makes it where, even if I did bring my whole self to work, some of these people wouldn't even understand what I'm talking about, and so it just kind of, it's a line you draw, which, okay, what's effective to get my job done? Otherwise, I'll just keep everything else at home. And that's just kind of how I learned how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is like when you're in a situation where you are, in my case, for a long time in the Marine Corps, very often the only woman involved, it's super easy to fall into bad habits of just like trying not to be too feminine. Make sure I don't wear any clothes that are open at my neck at all. Don't put on any makeup. And you're like, it is an internal trap of bad habits that you fall into that take a long time to get out of. Where you're like, no, it's completely okay. Not only is it okay, but the more that I am super whatever I am, in this case feminine, in my work environment, the more like that becomes a norm to have someone who's a lady in the tech field, not being like a guy, but just being like herself. And she's still totally competent. Because it falls into like a little downward spiral where you're like, yeah, she's really good, but she also doesn't wear makeup and seems a lot like the guy. And so she is like everyone else. And you're not bringing who yourself is as the example of why you can be diverse and still be really good at your job. So it is a trap. It's very easy to fall into.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those things. So just looking at the clock, I want to move forward. So let's start with Nash Lee on this next question. So when you mentor people who are interested in getting into data science, and this goes along with what you were just mentioning, what is the general like knowledge of what's to come, what's in your future that you're trying to get across to them? So both on the side of what that career path might look like, but also what their experiences might be with their identities. So do you talk at all about what it's like to be a woman or other intersectional identities when you talk to people that you're mentoring?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as being, who I am, you say all these different, underrepresented groups or intersectionalities, people are kind of drawn to, me and my experiences, especially people who are like me. And so I try to make sure that I am very open and honest when I'm mentoring, hey, I don't have it all figured out. I have mentors too that I rely on and I talk to. And I think everyone actually should have a mentor, especially in different aspects of your life or different areas. I think it's really important to not feel like, you're the only one all the time, or that nobody else deals with the same things that you deal with. And that's the one thing that I have to try to pass on to the mentees and people that I talk to, is that once you start feeling isolated and stop talking to other people, that's when, the decline starts, and you don't want that to happen. And so also, kind of like what Carrie was saying, like you're different, and those are the reasons why you're so great. You bring a whole different perspective to the table, and remember that. Don't look at it as if. I remember my first year in undergrad, and I felt like everybody knew how to code except for me in my first coding class, and I was like, did they meet up over the summer and like all get together or something? Like how's it that I don't know? But don't look at it as a disadvantage. Look at it as you just need to get the right resources, the right support system, and everything else that you need to catch up. And it's not impossible. You put in the work, you can get to where you need to be. And that's something that I tell people all the time. And I think too, just don't be afraid to be different. Like, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. And kind of building on that, let's start with Carrie for this question. So what types of things can you suggest that individuals can do in the workplace to advocate for other women or gender minorities? And how do you make use of those power structures that are in place? And do you feel like as you've gotten into more senior roles that you have a little bit more sway to take those actions?
Yeah. So I think that, this comes down to the same thing that's at the heart of all of these conversations, which is that especially as you move into senior and leadership roles, it really becomes more and more important that you are being authentic at work, that you are being open about who you are. You are a lady, you are different than everybody else. You come from a different background. I think that there is an aspect of, as you take the brave step to elevate what your internal identity is, it's everybody else that is now looking up to you in terms of, how should we address this? Is this okay? Can I be a little different and still be spectacular? Yes, you can. You will still be brilliant, even if you're a little different. Maybe even more brilliant. Maybe our whole project will be more brilliant if we bring this more to the table. So I think for me, part of it is just, not squashing what makes you different as you rise through the ranks. And in terms of elevating like the other people around you, I think, for me, some of it is, it's very easy to fall into patterns where certain types of voices are the ones that are more easily heard within settings. And I think that when you're in a leadership role, you're given an opportunity to just keep a light pulse check on that and see, like, are we consistently underrepresenting or underhearing a particular, it doesn't even have to be a visible difference. It can be a personality type or a particular background whose voice isn't coming to the table as strongly. And as you get into a leadership position, you have the ability to sort of make sure everybody does get elevated and does get heard during meetings. And it's usually just really little easy things that'll make a difference there.
And does anyone else have something to weigh in on in terms of mentorship or advocacy?
Yeah, sure. I think it just gives you opportunity to teach other people to learn from your mistakes. You can tell them about the technical skills and what they need, but also the other things that you learned along the way and stuff that other people have poured into you. And earlier in my career, I wouldn't have worn my hair natural. Felt like I had to straighten it. Now there's still laws that, in the workplaces, they can discriminate based on having natural hair and things like that. But for me now, that's one way that I can bring my full self to work more. And would encourage, other women of color, be yourself in that way. And if the environment doesn't allow you to be, then maybe that's not the good environment. But other little nuggets that I've had from women who've been in the industry longer, things like was huge. The eye-opening for me, don't do, when you go to work, don't do like women chores, like taking the notes, organizing the picnics or whatever it is. I don't really like picnics because it's a germ. I don't like eating other people's food. But things that sometimes you'll look in the technical workplace and the women are doing certain things like, I'm not your note taker, that kind of thing. So, know your role and kind of don't do sort of women housework in the workplace. And that was something that was profound. And those type of nuggets that I can pass on to other women.
And then as leaders, we can make sure not to be assigning that type of work only to other women.
I think something that's been helpful at my current company is collecting data on this, like actually doing well thought out, well formulated diversity and inclusion surveys, and then sharing that data internally and using it to start a dialogue. One of the questions that we had in our most recent one was, when there isn't a clear owner for some administrative task, who do you feel like does that usually fall to you? And like that having that kind of dialogue, one, it allows you to look at how you're doing year to year in a non-qualitative way, like an actual, like, how are we doing in the numbers kind of way. Two, I think it lets you have more one-on-one conversations that are meaningful. Like if you are in a space where you're seeing someone just had their idea shut down or repeated by someone else or got spoken over by someone, or someone used the wrong pronouns for them, even if you can't do it, you don't do anything in that moment, it allows you to talk to them separately. And then this doesn't feel out of nowhere. This is a normal part of the culture of what you talk about at your company. That's been very powerful.
Yeah, just really quick, touching on that again, because I found this to be really important, is when you are in those situations, especially when you're in a leadership role, although honestly, anybody who sees these situations where you come across something that's like a teeny tiny, like micro amount of being sexist or being racist. That's not like a big deal, but you're like, that made me feel a little weird. Maybe you didn't mean it that way, but it did make me feel a little weird. Ask for clarification. Just bring it up. Hey, I'm sorry. Would you mind like clarifying for me a little bit? What did you mean when you said this? And it is a way to like bring to the forefront of not letting all these little things just slide and slide and slide. Because in my experience, the little tiny things are more often what sets the culture than like one huge event. Huge events don't show up if you keep track of the little moments.
Yeah, I hear you on that. And it's often something that doesn't feel like it can rise to the level of like, reporting something to HR, for example. But you're right that it definitely sets the culture of the team. Okay, so let's start with Corinne for this one. So what advice do you have for people that are new to the field of data science about things that they can do now to set themselves up for promotion in the future? So is there anything specific that you think you've done in past jobs that set you apart to be a leader or be recognized as a top performer?
I think there's two things. So I think in any position that you have, you can lead. You can come up with new ideas. You can do proof of concepts. You can do sort of that extra. You can help teach others, mentor others. So I think in any position that I was in, I was always leading. But I think there's a second thing that I learned is that you kind of have to have that honest conversation of where you want to be and based on your performance. So you also have to be a little bit intentional and say, kind of, this is where I want to be. This is what I've done. What do I need to get to this next level? And kind of have that honest conversation. And if it's an environment where, they may not allow you to advance where you need to, then you have to think about, maybe there's somewhere else that I need to go. So I would say definitely in any position that you have, take that opportunity to be the leader where you are, so that can be seen, and then have that conversation of where you want to go. And if the environment isn't going to let you go, then you may have to look elsewhere. So I would say just take that accountability for your career as well, and also hold others accountable to if you have achieved what is required for that next level. That you kind of ask that question, have that honest conversation.
Yeah, and I find that we're lucky as data scientists that our skills are really in high demand. So it feels like management is aware that, we can go elsewhere if we want to. So I feel like that's given a little bit of leverage in, conversations in terms of what's needed to, do the work and to progress and to promote. I've also personally found that recording what is the definition of the next level is something that definitely helps people know what it takes to progress and defining that. So do any of you have experience with that in terms of what you think sets you up for the next promotion, or what you would encourage people at different companies to do to either set themselves up for promotion or as leaders to make sure that you're recognizing those skills in others? I know it's kind of a big question. Okay. Well, we can move on and take some audience questions. And if you think of something for that later, we can always fit it in.
I was gonna just add that one thing that I like to do and tell my team about is, don't wait until and this might not even answer your question. Hopefully it does. Don't wait until promotion time
Mhm.
or until it's time to find another job. Every month, every quarters, depending on whatever works for you, write down your accomplishments.
Mhm.
I actually have a little reminder on my phone every morning with my alarm. A list of my accomplishments comes up, so I can remind myself how great I am because sometimes you forget. And this is just being honest. A lot of times, you're dealing with problems every day. I just got finished writing a research paper. I had a couple of sleepless nights, like what Corinne was saying, trying to meet a deadline
Mhm.
for a conference. And so these are some of the things that happen, and you don't always feel great. And so sometimes, be very aware of your accomplishments, big and small, especially in the workplace. Like uh, for us, where I am in Amazon, we have very clear things you have to meet before you can be promoted. And so track that along the year. And again, just don't wait until promotion to try to remember everything. So.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
is
and I
great.
would add to that, take the review process seriously and record all that stuff, just like Nash Lee has said. And another thing, I think women tend to undersell ourselves.
Mhm.
Because I'll notice that people will promote like these small things and like send a big email and I did all of this. And I'm like, really? But I mean, sometimes you have to you need like record the small wins and the big wins. Because if I think, yeah, women sometimes we do undersell. And if we're doing something, blow it up and let people know because
Mhm.
other people are doing that. So you should too promote yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's a question from the audience. What local and national data science groups do you recommend students and practitioners getting involved in?
So I know there are several meetups. I know, like in the Atlanta area, I'm pretty sure they exist other places too. I think there's a data science one. There may even be a women in data science one. AWS, shameless plug. We have a lot of
Mhm.
groups and summits and things that we do. We do actually have a women in data science. So they do like meetings in various cities, and they have webinars that they show. Definitely a good way to stay connected, and it's good to have a network and a community. And so I think there are several smaller conferences. There's one called ML Conf that happens in Atlanta, in the West Coast, in New York, and they move it around sometimes. There's also Grace Hopper. A lot of us know about Grace Hopper Conference, which I think Anita Borg or organization kind of sponsors that and leads that, and they have local meetup groups in the area as well, and so they're open to both students as well as professionals.
Mhm.
Yeah, and plugging for the meetup groups again, like there's a lot of really good ones in Charlottesville
Mhm.
around data science, around Python, and that's definitely a nice way to get in touch, not just with, what's going on in this tech field, but also a lot of people that are lovely people to know. So,
Mhm. Yeah, and I
Yeah.
would also say get involved in your industry. So for me, working with higher ed data, there's a lot of conferences for people that work in higher ed, and it's really valuable to connect with other people that might be the only person at the university doing that type of work, for the administration. But just connecting with them and finding if there's a track at a conference, a lot of times there will be a larger conference and there will be a track for data analytics, and I found it's really valuable to go to those as well.
Yeah. I was actually just quickly looking at my Slack to see like what groups I'm a part of.
Yeah.
I think something that I'm part of a whole bunch of Slack groups that are different, both local and national and international groups. Out in tech and women in machine learning and data science, WIML-DS is how I always say it. Those are two really good ones. But I've also found that finding local meetups that fit your style. Like in DC, there are ones that are a little more networking. There are ones where people will just go give a talk. There are ones where people will do a small hack, like a project, and share. Finding the one that kind of meets your personality, so you're not like pushing yourself to go to these, and it's not a
Mhm.
chore, is very helpful.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I would also suggest when you mentioned the Slack communities, there are some communities that are fully online that are nationwide, and also on Twitter. I found a really good engagement from data science communities on Twitter. If you ask questions and use the various hashtags, you often get a response. And people tend to be really helpful because I think there's just so many opportunities to grow in this field and so many roles that are open. There's really a lot of people that are willing to help you kind of level up. So that's been nice for me, at least. Okay, so another question from the audience is, they're wondering whether you've seen older women in your companies. So far today, the most senior women are still quite young. In my last job, I had all the credentials to be a data scientist, PhD, etc., but it was difficult to get assignments. Does anybody have comments about age and interaction with gender?
Yeah, so I'll jump on that one. I think I've actually found that it's difficult being younger to get more senior level positions personally, and so I've seen quite a few older women, in my field and areas that their job opportunities are very much so available. What I have seen though is that a lot of people who didn't necessarily start out as a data scientist or as artificial intelligence roles, they want to know how to switch over. So, for example, if you're a traditional software developer or software engineer, and now you want to be called a data scientist, how do you make that happen? And of course, there's a lot of ways to do that. I think it depends on the company too, how easy that is. But I think I would just go ahead and just get started with something, like try a tutorial or try to do something in your personal life that you can use data science to solve, and start building up your repertoire, kind of like your portfolio of projects, so that when you do go to interviews or do talk to other leaders at your current company about what you're capable of, you have that to show. You can show, okay, here's my link. These are some of the projects that I've done. And even though I'm not doing this in my current, hopefully you get an opportunity to work hands-on in your current role before you can switch. But if not, everybody doesn't have that luxury. And so you still can build that up kind of on the side. And I think, again, getting involved with a lot of the groups that we talked about earlier, those people can also help you find those roles, regardless of what your age is. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the skills are so in demand. So if you have them, that's just definitely something that he'll so claim for. One of the women on my team, she did have, 20 years of experience in various software development roles, but did have a strong background with the master's, and she did switch careers, but did a lot of work to do that. Did a lot of outside training. Did a lot of, had access to data, so actually did a lot of valuable use cases where she was, and then kind of made that career transition. So definitely is possible that if you have the background and you can pick it up and you can show that you can do the work, then the opportunity is there.
And what are some other, a common question I get asked online is, what's a good way to step your way into data science? So you have, say you're on a totally different career path. We've mentioned you taking on projects, showing what you can do, showing your skills, but within your company or within your, existing career path, what suggestions do you have in terms of transitioning into data science for the first time, or, getting your first data science job? Or what are some other kind of entry points into the data science world?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we've seen at S&P is, even if you're in a position where, maybe there's not a very strong understanding of why does data science matter and why should I be a data science, it gives you an opportunity to not only level up your own data science skills in taking a project and showing that it's useful, but also being an internal advocate for data science and for making data-driven decisions within your company, which can be extremely valuable, because there's no place that you could go to where making data-driven decisions isn't a good thing to bring to the table. So even if your company doesn't necessarily embrace it in the moment that you want to make the switch or advocate for this, see if you can double on leveling up your own skills and also advocating for data science exactly where you are today. That's possible. The other thing that can be really useful for, like, trying a data science thing when you don't know where to start is try a couple Kaggle competitions. Just hack together some code and put it out there, and like take that as an initial project that's put together with you with nice data sets to take a stab at and see what you ended up with.
Who else had suggestions for getting into data science?
I think something that I found helpful when I was trying to switch I wasn't really doing any machine learning and trying to switch into that field, was finding small problems that only you can solve because you really know the data, you really know the problem, and then applying some method there. It is not easy because you often at companies, they don't have a lot of infrastructure in place. Because if they do, hopefully then they already have a team of machine learning people that you can work closely with. But if they don't, you're kind of putting together a solution as best you can, and it can be a little bit hacky, but it also solves a really acute, real problem. And that's a great way to convert your, you just learned some skill into like an actual value for a company.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And I think, my background, I was a data analyst before I was a data scientist. And I always think that that's a really great pipeline. And even if you have, a data science degree, if you can't find a job with a data scientist title immediately, taking a data analyst title, it's not going to be a waste of time. There's so much of an overlap of skills, and even if you're not doing machine learning on the job. But what Pri just mentioned is also important in terms of finding ways to become valuable. And if you are on a team that has, a really high demand there's a big backlog of something in particular, and it's data related, and you might not have that skill yet, but if you learn that skill, you could help with that backlog. It's a good way to kind of inch your way into another area within the company, is to say, hey, I'm learning this. I might not be as fast as you are, but I could help out. So what task can I take on?
And that's a great point, because you said the data analyst role, because really the key is getting access to the data. And then from there, you can do something. So if you get where you can get near the data, then you have the opportunity to try something and prove that there's business value. So
great point. All right. Well, those are all the questions that I see from the audience. So let's just go around and give any final advice or words of inspiration that you want to leave our audience with. So let's start with Carrie.
Okay. Yeah. So regardless of your background or probably even the career that you're choosing, there are definitely times that are going to show up where you're going to feel very down about yourself and about like the situation. And do I have the skills? Is this going to work out? This was a really hard day. And it is one of my coworkers, my boss actually, who is delightful, has this saying on his desk that is super inspirational for everyone who walks by, which is essentially just do good work. At the end of the day, when all else fails and you don't know what's happening, just do good work and be accountable for like technical excellence inside of yourself. And then even if everything else gets out of control, you at least know that you presented good work. And more often than not, putting that good work forward and advocating for it will get you where you want to go if you're doing the things that you want to be doing.
Great, thank you. How about Corinne? Oh, you're still muted.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would say like my biggest thing that I would say for you is be your own best advocate. Always make sure that you focus on keeping and maintaining and gaining your technical skills, because at the end of the day, that is what's going to take you where you need to go. Of course, kind of the relational pieces are important, empathy, all that good stuff. But I would say be your own advocate, maintain your technical skills, always be studying, always be learning, and then pay it forward.
Great. How about Pri?
I feel like something that has held true for me is a good sign that I really love something or I really enjoy it is that I'm willing to critique it. And I think machine learning is a field that I'm so glad I get to do this day to day. Like I think about about my job, not in a stressed out way in the shower, like I could try that kind of way. But there are a lot of systemic problems with this field, and with the products that we're building and that we're putting out in the world. And so I love that a lot of the people that are doing the best work in this field are also just like finding all the holes and pointing them out. Right. And I think that is a good, that will set us up to have like an even better community in the future. And then I just have to do this, but I'm going to quote Lizzo. Like, if I'm shining, everybody's going to shine. Like that kind of like, I will do good work, like you said, Carrie, right? But I'm going to let other people, I'm going to know that like by doing a great job and by being my full, like vulnerable self at work, other people are going to get to do that too. And that's something I hold close to my heart.
Great. Nash Lee, do you want to finish us up?
Certainly. So I would say, it's really important to have a good support system, because sometimes, you run into challenges, you don't always feel happy about everything, and you need somebody to kind of rely on or talk to. And so that could be, somebody in your field, somebody who's not in your field, just, and you can have various people in your support system, but just make sure you have somebody to go to. I think also having mentors is important. Also making sure that you kind of surround yourself with a team of folks that have strengths where you have weaknesses, so that when you talk to them, they're gonna help, like say iron sharpens iron. They're gonna make sure they hold you accountable for things that you may be overlooking or blind spots. And I think, as far as more work related takeaways go, make sure that if at all possible, that you're doing something that you're really passionate about. And so there's so many different routes to take in terms of data science. And so you talk about healthcare, you talked about face recognition, the things that I work on. There's a lot of earlier we talked about policy today and how this all relates to government. And there are a lot of people in government, by the way, who need experts like us to help them, make these policies and these regulations. And so make sure that whatever you're doing, like it literally like gets you up out the bed in the morning, because you can't wait to go in and solve the problem. And so I would say that. And then, lastly, just, don't be afraid of being different or being, like you say, a woman or underrepresented minority. Make sure that when you're going to work every day and the people that you're working with, that you are finding there are enough similarities amongst us to where we can get along and get the job done. And so make sure that you're, not always thinking about, okay, how different I am, but also how similar we are and how we can work together. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you all for your awesome advice and conversations. You had such great insights. I'm really happy with how this all went. So thank you each for participating, and hope to get to be on panels with all of you again. So that's all we had for now. I'm not sure if we need to hand it back to the moderators of the overall conference, but either way, there's going to be a break until the next one starts. So thank you, everybody, and I hope we continue to communicate online. And our handles are out there on social media. Mine is Becoming Data Sci. Maybe that's a good thing to go around and say one last time. How can people contact you? So best way for me is on Twitter at Becoming Data Sci. Carrie, how about you?
Definitely LinkedIn.
Okay, LinkedIn. Nash Lee, how about you?
LinkedIn. I'm the only Nash Lee Cephas out there, so feel free to look me up on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. Yeah.
Great. How about you, Pri?
LinkedIn and Instagram.
Okay, and Corinne?
Yeah, I'm Corinne Reed on all platforms, so Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever. Corinne Reed.
Great. We'll talk to everybody later. Great to meet you. Bye.